So I'm on a journey for more sustainable living practices, and the next step in my journey is biochar. What is biochar? Biochar is effectively charcoal. This isn't the kind of charcoal that you would obviously buy for like a charcoal grill. No, this is the kind of charcoal where at the end of the night with a fire pit, this is the thing that's burning. And for me, when I have fire pits in my home, at the end of the night, when I'm done with my fire pit, I will quench the fire pit with water. It turns out that's actually a really effective way to not only keep the pieces like this from burning at the end of the night, but it also happens to preserve just the carbon that was burning. And now you just got a solid chunk of carbon. There is no more wood in here. It is just through and through carbon. It is charcoal. And this is what we're calling biochar. So biochar is good for being a soil amendment, which has a few benefits. One is, the easy one here is when you grind up biochar and you put it into your soil, what you're grinding up here is charcoal, aka carbon. When you grind up the carbon and put it back in your soil, that is sequestering that carbon for a very long time, which is great. So here is a big chunk of carbon. I could either burn this, and this turns into CO2 in combination with the oxygen that goes up in the atmosphere, and that's not great in a world where the climate is changing on us. Or I can grind this up, add it to my soil, and after more and more layers get added to it and a lot of precipitation, it gets sequestered into the ground. And now all the carbon that's right here is not in the atmosphere. It's underground, being used by microbes and fungi, and being used to better the health of my soil and ultimately the plants that I care about. So that's really good benefit number one. Really good benefit number two is the surface area of biochar is really high, which enables a really nice benefit. So let's look at this. Here's a piece of biochar. Let's imagine for a moment that this is 1 gram of biochar. 1 gram, for reference, is about the mass of a paperclip. Let's imagine that this is 1 gram of biochar. 1 gram of biochar has, if you were to look at it at a microscopic level, it has enough surface area that it would cover 237 square meters. Like 237 square meters. That's a lot from this little piece. Again, so if you were to look at this under a microscope, see all the ridges and bends and cavities and all that, and to flatten it out, it would fit into a square that is 50 feet by 50 feet, or roughly 15.5 meters by 15.5 meters, like from this little piece. That's amazing. The reason why the amount of surface area matters is it creates a lot of spaces and opportunities for nutrients, water, oxygen, microbes, and fungi to get in there and live and create a little ecosystem. So the idea here is you take not pieces this big, but pieces much smaller. So you grind this up into 1/4-inch pieces or around that size, and then you add it to your soil. Almost. You can't just add it to your soil as is because there's so much surface area. If you just put the biochar in there with the cavities and there's nothing to fill those cavities, then those cavities will get filled. And what will happen is it'll actually suck the nutrients out of your soil and be a net negative. So that's what you should do with biochar is inoculate it with something good that you want or something good that you have. So I happen to do quite a bit of composting. It's been a hobby that I picked up this year. And I've learned the hard way that composting produces compost tea. I used to compost outside. I now compost, now that it's winter, in my wood shop. And I didn't realize I needed to put something under my tumbler because compost tea comes out. I now have something under my tumbler, and I'm now catching compost tea. But compost tea is one of those things where it's a great additive for biochar. So the general idea here is to take the biochar that you have, take the charcoal that you have, grind it down into little pieces that are very small, that can be spread out through a spreader. But prior to doing that, soak all of it in something that's beneficial. For example, the liquid organics that come out of my compost, aka compost tea. And so you soak those in there. And so now those spaces within that biochar aren't empty. They're actually saturated with the microbes from my compost, some nitrogen, and other organic material. And now once that has been sufficiently soaked in, then I can add that to my mulch, to my garden, to my soil, and I'm now delivering nutrients to my soil rather than taking them away by adding a dry biochar. So this is the kind of benefit I'm looking to try and like I said, I'm counting this as a sustainable living practice because, like, as a woodworker, obviously I produce a lot of sawdust. That sawdust goes to creating compost. That compost now goes back into my yard and my garden and my mulch. As a woodworker, I also produce a lot of offcuts or pieces that I just can't use. And I was burning them, and I will still burn some of them, but then I will also quench the fire and save some pieces. Because if I could take some of these pieces and prevent them from getting burned into the atmosphere, and I can get benefits to the soil from it, that's great. So now I have sawdust going into my compost. I have offcuts, and the offcuts that weren't getting burned all the way, getting quenched and effectively just becoming a big chunk of carbon. I can now use the compost tea from my compost tumbler to saturate that biochar and create a good soil amendment and add it back into nature. And so this is great. Like this is a good little self-sustaining operation that I'm putting together, and this is really great. And I would encourage anyone else who is creating wood offcuts, doing gardening, doing anything like this where you've just got extra raw materials sitting around that you're just burning off anyway or throwing off anyway, maybe try this out. Maybe try creating biochar, create compost tea, get the nutrients back into the nature, and see how it works for you. We'll see how it goes. Thanks for watching.